Hi, good evening, and welcome to this edition of Keeping It Real with Rammona. I am hoping that there'll be a lot of you joining me here. It's a very special edition today with my guest, Kartik Bajoria. He has led a very interesting and amazing journey. And what I wanted to talk about today is, this whole search that a lot of us have, which is searching for the real you. So I am just waiting to have Kartik join me on the live while I just take a moment and introduce him. He's an alumnus of the Doon School, Hindu College, and the New York Film Academy. He's spent a lot of time in the film and television industry in Mumbai. And recently, the work that he's been involved with is work with lots of children, uh, specifically in the area of communication and public skills. So I'm going to bring him on, and I hope this is going to be a conversation for all of us. Thank you all for joining me and being here. Hi, Kartik.
Hi, Rammona. How are you?
Good. How are you? Great to have you here on the live.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here. And yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah. So this is an edition of Keeping It Real with Rammona. And like I just, I took a couple of minutes. I was just introducing your work a little bit. And I'm just really, really happy that Kartik is here with us. He's led a journey over the last several years, which is very inspirational in many ways. So, Kartik, I wanted to just ask you if you can just tell us a little bit about, the work that you do currently.
Rammona, so very quickly, my wife and I were working in Bombay for about a decade in different capacities in the media industry. And along the way, I realized that there was a certain kind of individual who cut out to the media industry, which is very rewarding in its own ways. It provides a lot of creative satisfaction, etc. But there's chaos in it. And there's a certain kind of person that revels in that chaos, and that wasn't me. And I also had this nagging feeling that I'd had for that there was something else that was really my true calling. And purely by chance, a friend's son who headed a school in Bombay asked me to do a few fill-in classes. And once I was in the classroom and started interacting with kids, I realized that's what it was. So pretty much chucked up everything. And Anuja and I moved back to my home. And since then, my primary preoccupation, very, very happily, has been teaching. Now, since I'm not a qualified or a trained teacher, but with my media background, I suppose, only teach communication skills. So I teach communication skills, everything under that fairly broad umbrella, which is fiction and non-fiction writing, public speaking. So that's what I do currently. I'm not associated with any one school or college or organization because I absolutely love the freedom of being able to be at an NGO one day, at a boarding school the next, at a college the day after that, and interact with as many varied students as I can in terms of everything, diversity in age, community, financial strata, whatever it may be. So that's what I currently do. Very quickly, though, I must tell you that I have a hidden agenda behind teaching, which I rarely share with parents of most of my students, which is that I like to be able to get, even if it's one student out of an average of 10 students I'm teaching, if I can get that individual to undertake some kind of genuine process of self-discovery, of introspection, of experimentation, and come to realize X, Y, and Z are my true passions, and give that student the courage to convert that passion into a lifelong pursuit, into a lifelong career. That's really what I'm trying to do. Because I feel that at the end of the day, too many people, a vast majority of people who might be doing very well financially in their
Sure.
set careers are woefully frustrated and unhappy, leading to them being unhappy, their families being unhappy, and ultimately the society being unhappy.
Yeah. So, guys, this is Keeping It Real with Rammona, and just what the conversation, the conversation took right now is one of the reasons Kartik is here, today with all of us, because I think this is a very important conversation that, how many of us are still searching for that, And so, Kartik, tell me, as you went on this journey, what were the challenges that you faced? Because, obviously, world as a hidden agenda behind you teaching children. There's obviously something more to the story. So would you like to share something with us on that, please?
There is. Okay, so the plain truth of it is this, Ramona. I think that most human beings, it's part of the human condition. Most, there is an I in me, and that I, according to me, stands for
Yeah.
individual or individuality. That individuality can only develop, thrive, if there is parental validation. Many of us, till our dying days, seek that validation from our parents. Some get it very early on, some don't. Some who don't really care, good for them. I wasn't one of them. So, to put it bluntly, I desperately sought validation for uh, for the person that I was. Perhaps not receiving that, I finally did get it from a few of my masters at board, and that is where I developed a deep respect for them, the individuals, for power and positive influence that they can have, and the formative impact that they can have on a student's life. So there is quite right. There is a deep-rooted reason why I suppose towards being a mentor or a teacher, but that's really it. Uh, Teaching isn't at all about the subject that is being instructed. It's not about the chemistry or the physics or the math or the Hindi.
Sure.
It's really about recognizing as a unique individual, and enabling that student to recognize that for himself or herself, and giving that person confidence and
So thank you for
validation.
thank you for sharing that, because I think, that's so beautiful that, each individual should be recognized for what they are about. Some of us struggle, for years, or like you said, fit into a mold. But I see more and more people stepping up and, being brave enough to make different choices from, what normally would be a given choice for them. So thank you so much for that. So, I'd love to know a little bit more about, some of the children you've been working with, because, I've been following your work, and I know that, there have been some kids who, you've mentored and trained, and some of them have gone out and done absolutely amazing things. So please
Well,
do share with us.
that's very kind of you to say, and my students keep saying that as well. My parents keep saying that, but let me tell you, in all humility, no teacher can do anything. It's the student who's going out there and accomplishing those great feats. Um, I've been very lucky, very very lucky, because certain mentors of mine in Jaipur, for example, there's a gentleman called Mr. Sandeep teaching me. He had the misfortune of trying to teach me math and accounting in the day when I was a student. But
Uh-huh.
anyway, so he's been a mentor of mine, and he's actually the person who gave me the first break in the sense to teach, because Otherwise, you know that there are prerequisites. You need to have a B.Ed, etc., etc.
Sure.
So what I've been able to do, Rammona, is teach, like I said, a wide range of students. Me, tremendous satisfaction, for example, is if I go into a friend's NGO that has HIV positive children, and with them, showing them a few short films, and we discuss things. I'm absolutely amazed at how perceptive, intelligent, and sensitive they are. If I have a bunch of students who is very talented but is struggling in Jaipur and in Rajasthan, because uh, it's not as literary as some other states, and they're going to
Sure.
sort of take part in an international debating
Yes.
competition,
Yes.
and they go out and sort of win gold and silver. That's
Yeah.
extremely gratifying because, like, for
Absolutely.
example, I had this group of senior schoolers who were taking part in this competition that takes place at Princeton, if I remember correctly. The finals are held there. It's the
Yes.
World Scholars Cup, and
Yeah.
so the bunch of them came to me for about 15 minutes. We did rigorous workshopping on writing and debating, the two facets of this competition, and they went and did very, very well there. So that's extremely gratifying. Although I must tell you that I'm inherently opposed to competition.
Yeah.
What I prefer and my bigger accomplishments as a mentor or a teacher is, for example, I had a student, without naming that student, who was painfully shy, introverted, reclusive, even didn't take part in anything at their school, and I was seeing the student for over a year, and then the parents told me that there's such a huge transformation. We don't see this as the same child, because that person is now volunteering to take part in debates and drama,
Wow.
etc., etc. So I think
That's
that is
incredible.
really the bigger reward than some gold medal. I mean, not to belittle that accomplishment, but
Yes.
to get a student out of his or her shell, uh,
Absolutely.
and and uh, and at least nudge them towards recognizing and embracing their true potential.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you on that. Reshma has made a comment here saying teaching is to recognize the person as an individual. So true, Kartik. And Kamal says very inspiring. So I think, we have a few viewers here who are, finding the conversation pretty engaging and interesting. The
Reshma, incidentally, hi Reshma, thank you for joining. Reshma is if I should call her my student, she's a fellow writer who had
Okay.
done a fiction writing workshop with me a couple of years ago, and we've become good friends. And yeah, she's always super supportive, and again, she's a wonderful example. If I can now just call her out by name, of somebody who had, like a lot of women in this country, uh,
Yeah.
kind of lost in domesticity over many, many, and just
Sure.
needed that little nudge to reacquaint herself with the creative force that she is. And I'm so glad, because post our workshop, she's been writing regularly and getting published, and
How
even teaching
wonderful.
now. Yeah.
How wonderful, Kartik. That's awesome. So, talk a little bit about your wife, Anuja, and, maybe a little bit about your love story and her love for cooking. I know that in the last few months you've been experimenting with cooking too. So, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
It's a terrible cliche that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. It's also a very sexist cliche that I don't necessarily subscribe to. But being a product of a boarding school, and that too a school that is notorious for bad food, I think all unconsciously seek good cooks in their to-be partners. Um, but defense, I don't think it started that way. to go off to film school in Los Angeles. I had a couple of months to kill in India. And a common friend told me that, listen, buddy, you've suddenly one fine morning woken up and decided to go study film. You have no clue what it's about. You're going to make a complete ass of yourself there. So I have a friend who works at a production house in Delhi. Why don't I fix up a meeting and you do a quick internship there so that you save face when you actually get to film school? So I said, hey, great. And so I went to interview at two production houses in Delhi. One was a very big, well-known one, and one was a relatively modest, smaller one where Anuja worked. And serendipity or fate, the larger organization called me and said, you can join us. And I had seen Anuja the fateful day of my interview at her company. And I called a larger company and I said, thanks, but no thanks. So for the 2 months before going off to film school, she was kind of my boss, and she schooled me.
Interesting, very interesting.
And the cooking thing actually comes because Anuja's also been much more so than I actually. She's been in television production, directing and writing in live non-fiction television for over a decade. And coincidentally, most of her work was to do with food shows. Although growing up herself, she was an eater or a cook, she had so much exposure to these fantastic chefs and their passion for cooking that she sort of picked it up along the way. And then, of course, in me, she perfect guinea pig, shall we say? I don't know. But I've been the blessed beneficiary of all of her wonderful, wonderful cooking.
Awesome. That's great. So, I started the live by just, talking a little bit about the work that Kartik does. He's had a very interesting journey here. And wants to, work in the area of communications, in particular with children. A lot of publications like the Hindu, the Times of India, the Deccan Herald Chronicle, Statesman, Express, to name a few. He's also someone who's a host and a moderator, and serves on the boards of several cultural youth and literature festivals. So I have also shared information, on the live itself on how you can, find him online, on Instagram, on Facebook, on all the different social media that he's present. He's someone who, I personally find is leading a life where, he's leading a life where the search for the is something that I think he's doing in a beautiful manner. So I want to take a conversation now to a slightly different area, Kartik. I wanted to, talk about a couple of other things. One of them is, an addiction that you mentioned. And the second is, of course, a diagnosis that you received, some time back. So if you would be kind enough to talk to me,
right.
Share with our listener your journey
certainly.
here.
So it's funny because we were earlier talking about individual and I, and I think the flip side of I, the individual, is I for insecurity. Because if you don't receive that validation, that acknowledgement, that acceptance, and that support, your individuality can very quickly turn into a manner of insecurity. What happens to a lot of boarding school products, it certainly happened to me, was that I had accomplished a fair bit by the time I finished my tenure at Doon. When you get out of that kind of cocooned environment, the bee's knees, and in a relatively harsher Delhi University atmosphere, it can be a bit intimidating. You considered yourself to be really cool. Your immediate peers did as well, and that's because now suddenly Doon School means nothing. Squash team means nothing. Music captain means nothing. Means anything. You have to establish yourself from ground zero. If you're having to do that in an atmosphere where there isn't support from the home front either in terms of your choices, academic and otherwise. I think, in my case at least, that's essentially, now that I look back and I've tried to analyze this over and over and over again, is when you fall prey to a crutch. In my case, that crutch, unfortunately, was smoking. Within the first week of moving to Delhi and joining Hindu College English Honors, I bought my first packet of cigarettes. I had a cigarette, and what started was a terrible, terrible dependency that lasted over 2 decades of chronic smoking of over a pack a day. And the interesting thing is that I always knew it was wrong. I always knew, I was always ashamed of it, because shockingly few people knew that I was a chronic chain smoker. So yeah, that's what happened with that. It's a terrible, ghastly habit. Very, very difficult to kick. Tried many times. Went through the motions of, the nicotine patch, gum, slowly giving it up. All these things happened in cycles over the 20 years. Particularly after I met Anuja, there were new deadlines set every now and again. By next birthday, by the time we move cities, by the time we have a child. And really speaking, nothing worked until the 17th of October 2019 in the evening, where a fairly innocuous seeming dull pain at the base of my throat, a sonography revealed was a cancerous tumor. And the funny thing is that thyroid cancer technically has nothing to do with smoking, but the shock to the system, to the mind and body was so much that now 17th of October, 5 p.m. 2019 was when I had my last cigarette.
Wow.
It was bad. It was absolutely terrible. Why should I lie? Because also what had happened was that it was two things that I was simultaneously battling. I had chucked the cigarette, which induced terrible withdrawal symptoms. At the same time, I was in this haze of disbelief of, oh my God, I'm 39 and I've got cancer. That the 2 weeks that followed the 17th of October were the worst, by consequence of people around me, my mom, my wife. Most painfully for me, when I look back, sub 3-year-old daughter, because, as much as you may try and conceive and put on a brave face and be happy, children are extremely perceptive. And, they can sense the vibe of the household changing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
kids know. I mean, we can try to hide whatever we want, but children just know. They have a knowing.
Yeah, absolutely. But but you come to terms with it. You do research. One is very, very fortunate to have very dear friends who are doctors. Anuja has been the sole reason for my resurrection. Another very dear friend of mine who's a doctor, Aditya Soral, has been a huge reason for my resurrection. The fact that there's so much more to live, to love, to do, to want to do desperately. You just have to psych yourself out. The motions, go through the treatment, the surgery, the treatment, the therapy, and yeah, you just have to do it. I mean, you have to, of course, affect a huge lifestyle change. I had probably taken a lot of things for granted, abused my system, not just with smoking, otherwise also. You know what, Rammona? I realized that cancer is not just a physical, not just the manifestation of physical abuse to the system. It has to be emotional, an emotional deficit or hurt or trauma that ultimately, it's a combination of these two things. Yeah.
No, I agree. I totally agree with you on that. and you saying that there's just so much more to do, to learn, to love, that almost brought me to tears, because I think diagnosed with an illness or not, sometimes there are so many people who are ready to give up on life for different reasons, and all of us have to seek out those, even those small things which can inspire us, which can bring that joy to us.
Right.
And I've worked with the people with cancer in the past, in the work that I do. And so I mean, I totally, it's not always just the physical abuse or the diet we've been on. There's always that manifests in the physical body. Energetically, that creation happens somewhere in your mental body or your emotional body. So I totally get that. And so is that an area you've been working on changing as well for yourself, and how's that gone for you?
Tremendously, tremendously, and changing in a number of ways, Ramona. What I want to say to you and to whoever's watching this now and who's hopefully going to watch it later,
So
is that do whatever it is that you need to do. Of course, you will get advice to change your diet, to change your lifestyle, to lose weight, to become healthier. All of those fairly obvious things, but
yes.
seek help, seek counseling. I'm not taking classes these days because I had a huge bout of depression. I didn't feel as if I was doing justice to my students or to their parents. I halted the classes, and as we speak, I'm in therapy. I'm seeing a psychologist because it's the most intelligent thing one can do. There is still, unfortunately, so much stigma and shame attached to seeking help in this country,
Yeah.
especially in smaller cities. Um, Seek that help. Talk to a professional because it's really really going to help. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I have transformed my diet. I got vegan, gluten free. I was already lactose intolerant, um, and the other thing is that post cancer, uh, you know, you're going to have problems. You're going to have little niggles that keep cropping up because it's taken a real beating,
Hmm.
because immunity is down. Um, uh, uh, you know, uh, the paranoia I feel on several days and mornings these days during the coronavirus pandemic when I wake up is, how much more susceptible am I? And all those thoughts and feelings are natural. They will come to you. The trick is not to deny them. The trick is
Yeah.
not to beat yourself up for having those feelings, because you don't become lesser of a man or a woman or a person for having them.
Absolutely.
And talk to someone, and I don't do it enough myself, but uh, uh, you know uh, love and receive love from loving people around you, your friends and family. Don't
Yeah.
deny them, don't push them out.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful the way you put it. So yeah, I totally agree on that, because sometimes when we are struggling through something, we can, start operating from a place, or that kindness gets rejected by us. But at a time like that, that's what we need more of. And
Exactly.
the other thing you talked about is, when we're experiencing something, in the mental space, where if we're feeling depressed or there's something else going on, on a mental level, have the courage to seek that help. There are lots
Yeah,
of people who are willing to help you, whether on a professional basis or otherwise, like you said, seek
absolutely.
our support. And I think that that is something that um, needs to go out in this country, at least, that it's all right to be in a depression, or to be in a low state, or to be going through some sort of mental illness, and it's perfectly all right to seek out that help. And anything and everything's changeable. That's what I believe, Kartik.
Absolutely.
That's what I've seen
Absolutely.
in my life. Anything and everything
Oh,
can
yeah.
be changed. You've just
you
got to
if
be
you
willing
if
to do
you
it.
if I, It is inconceivable for me, and this is another thing that I've always been very open and proudly open about. There are these silly misconceptions that a lot of people have. Oh, this person smokes and drinks, how can he be teaching my child bad influence? I personally don't subscribe to that at the cost of losing students. And so, to me, if you told me a year and a half ago that you won't be able to have, your large vodka with a few cigarettes and half a kilo of meat, I would have said you're mad. And I mean, after I came back from Bombay on the 15th of January 2020, after my radioiodine therapy, I was 111 and a half kilos.
Okay.
And I'm 91 kilos today, 10 more to go, but
Wow.
20 kilos lesser. Feeling much healthier, generally speaking, apart from a few niggles. And it's all because of a combination of love and support from family and friends, guidance from counseling, and lifestyle changes. It's all of the above. My daughter has been a huge healing source to me. My students have been a huge healing source to me. My writing has been a huge healing source to me.
So thank you, Kartik, for being so vulnerable and having, this conversation with me. I think it's really, really inspirational, the way you've handled the last few months and how you're moving forward with your work and all that you still continue to create in spite of, whatever restrictions you've had to put, in terms of your work. I think whatever you're still creating is wonderful. I wanted to ask you, can you share something with me around, some funny questions or interesting questions parents or kids ask you when, they are looking for your expertise or, they're enrolling for one of your courses? Is there something you can share with us?
Oh, there are so many. There are so many. Okay, so I suppose they're not entirely to blame, but many parents contact me assuming that I'm teaching grammar or vocabulary enhancement or English. And then I have to sort of launch into this this explanation about how communication skills is not really about language. I don't care what language the student or the person is writing in or speaking in, if Farsi or English or Hindi or whatever, because the fundamentals remain the same.
Sure.
I also, you might be surprised to know, have a lot of students who are, how shall I put this politically correctly? Homemakers, middle-aged homemakers, who are now at a stage where perhaps they have a little bit of time and freedom and don't need to be, supervising their children because they're not that young anymore, and want to sort of explore learning how to write, etc., etc. So that's one. That's not something I'm mentioning because it's a wonderful niche group of students that I have that I really enjoy interacting with. But yeah, funny questions. A lot of parents, बेटे को आप तो समझा दो कि engineering ही करनी. And then honestly speaking, I say हाँ बिल्कुल मैं समझा दूंगा, आप मेरे पास भेज दीजिए, and I give the kid an exact opposite lecture and send him back. I say बेटा photographer बनना है तो photographer ही बनो.
Wonderful.
So that happens a lot, and one thing that happens a lot, which is not very funny, but I think I should mention it, is that so I work with a lot of students when they're applying to colleges abroad, and when they're at a stage where they're writing their various essays and application forms, etc., etc. And you know that college admissions abroad is a bit of a process, and there's lots of writing work that students need to do, which they're not necessarily very good at. They assume that they're required to write some Pulitzer Prize winning language, which is not the case, because colleges have full insight into that individual. Unfortunately, most students in India run to counselors to have these essays written by them, not realizing that admissions panels abroad can see through that in a matter of seconds. So I have a lot of students who get in touch with me, and a lot of parents who tell me to write their children's essays, and I never do that. I tell them that I can guide them, edit their essays, give them some ideas in terms of pointers, but I don't write their essays.
Wonderful. So, Kartik, I just wanted to share some of the comments here. There are quite a few people who've, shared some things here. Jeevan has said that he loves the way Kartik's outcreated himself. It's very inspiring. And Kamal says, so brave. Ritu Lamba says, wow, Kartik, more power to you. Ambika says, thanks for sharing, Kartik. And Nitika said that the advice you've given is very, very wonderful. Vasudha Arora here says, so cool that you're going beyond any stigma and shame and discomfort associated talking about therapy. More power to you. So that's what I was saying, that is a conversation that is so important right now, Um
No,
someone
but
else.
listen, the only reason this conversation is happening is because of you. So if you allow me to a quick 2 minutes to sort of turn the tables and ask you, Rammona, first, sincerely to congratulate you to start this series. It's very brave, and I want to certainly know from you why you have started this particular series, because from what I can tell, you're an accomplished tarot reader, etc., etc. Why did you feel the need to start real conversations with real people?
Yeah, so actually, Kartik, I work in the space of, healing therapy, and yeah, tarot is something I've done for a long time, maybe for 20 years. But, the last 7, 8 years have been an exploration for myself. Was an exploration that I started for myself. I wanted to change certain things in my life. And that's how I started out, exploring different modalities to see, what it is that change that I was looking for in my life. And why I started this series is, you know, I am so touched by different people that I've come across that just being themselves, honestly, are an inspiration to so many people, around them. So maybe I'm just really lucky to somehow be able to witness that happening. And I think the way I lead my life, on an everyday basis is to just try to stay connected to my own core. And no matter what's happening in my life, so there have been situations which have been tough. I've had my very, very difficult moments and, my own struggles, in these last so many years I've been on planet Earth. But I think what's kept me going is knowing that if I just, maintain the humor in my life, if I just stay connected with the individuals around me who love me, who care for me, if I try to reach out to someone when they need help, and if I'm there for them without an expectation of getting something back in return, then I know that the universe has my back, and somehow the other things just always work out for me eventually. That's the reason why I embarked on people, either they've been connected from school, it could be some new people I've come across who, are just whatever they're doing in their life right now. It's sad because sometimes they think they're not making a difference to the world, or they're not being, the change that this world requires. But
Sure.
I see them from a different space because I can see that what they are creating with their work, with their very presence on this planet, is something beautiful. And that's, the reason why I reached out to you, because, in spite of everything, that you've been experiencing, creating, and, inspiring people, and, searching for the, real you. So let me ask you now, have you found that real you you're looking for, Kartik?
I think, the thing is, okay, let me answer that this way, Ramona. I think that it's a wonderful thing to be confused because it allows me and the privilege to keep discussing. Um, I'm very, very content at the moment. Having said that, if 5 years hence I suddenly realize or discover that I want to farm, I don't know, I'll do that. But for the moment, I'm very content. I think I have certainly in teaching calling. Um, I'm told on good authority that I'm a reasonably
you know, uh, finding the real you and your journey there.
yeah. So like I was saying, that right now I'm very, very content. I did have a bit of an existential crisis in Bombay working in the media. but I'm very happy that I'm teaching. Nothing gives me greater joy. There are days when I'm feeling miserable physically or mentally, and then and everything just changes, everything vanishes. All the negativity just poof, it's gone. So yeah.
Wonderful. So I wanted to ask you, what is it that you're looking forward to now? As you know, recently shared this article about the purpose of art. So since your work is field, I wanted to ask you that what are your thoughts around that? How important is it, to have that creative play for all of us,
Right.
adults, children, all of us?
Okay, so what I would like to do going forward, and this is something that so a lot of people have been suggesting to me that I should perhaps have my own institute or something. But to be perfectly honest, despite being Marwadi, I don't think there's a single business or a bone in my body, and also administration is not something that I'm very keen on doing. My primary to be in class interacting with kids. Um, but what I do want to do, and I point, is to open an NGO, but some sort of an organization. I have a couple of names in mind which I can't share right now, but an organization that kind of brings together of seeking. So under it, there's a certain amount of teaching that goes on, but also it starts to organize events and activities that all flow towards that goal of getting people to discover themselves and be themselves, whether they be, panel discussions, a little conference, or even a play based on that theme. That is something that I would really want to do going forward. As far as art and its purpose goes, again, I've been very lucky. There's a wonderful newspaper in Jaipur called First India. And the people who run it are well known to me, and they're very kind and they indulge me. Because, Rammona, what happens is that in the world in general, people love to shoehorn each other, right? So if I want an article published in a newspaper, most publications now, because they know me and view me and recognize me as somebody who writes on education, won't necessarily take a piece that I've written on the arts or on cinema or anything else. Whereas as human beings, we have multiple exposures and multiple interests and passions.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I'm able to do that here. I'm very, very blessed. And so I did a little piece on the purpose of art because I was beginning to hear more and more recently absurd, in my opinion, statements like "my art is apolitical," and that's just rubbish to me. I'm sorry, because no art can be apolitical. Art is not to be just donned on our walls to make them look pretty. It has a much mightier purpose. And I felt very strongly that I should remind ourselves, all of us artists, that especially at a time when there's a global pandemic on, that art needs to question things that are going on around us. Art needs to record it. Art needs to preserve it so that we can then evaluate things that steps that were taken and steps that were perhaps missed. That's a huge purpose that art has.
Yeah, very well said. So I just want to thank you for being here today, Kartik. I mean, it's been beautiful conversation that we've been able to have, and I think from some of the comments already shared with our viewers, obviously, a lot of things that you talked about resonated with many people, and I just want to wish you all the best, and I hope you continue shining that light of yours and spreading more magic along the way. Thank you so much for being here.
Rammona, it was my pleasure. I can't thank such an important sort of little movement that you've started. I hope that are 100 times more inspiring than I am. We are all human. We are all fallible. We are all mortal. We may seem inspiring, but we deal with our own demons. That is the human condition. But you are very, very and sensitive to start this series, and I'm so grateful that you have joined.
Thanks, Kartik. And you know what you said about demons, that's what makes us real. We have
Exactly.
all of that. We have the good, we have the bad, we have the ugly, we have the beautiful, we have everything. And it's all about embracing all of us completely. And once we do that, that's when we're able to, evolve as an individual.
Exactly.
So thank you again, Kartik, so much for being here.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Lots of love. Take care. Stay safe. And bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye. Thank you.